with Saturn in Aries, there is the alchemy of this particular alignment is disciplined will. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Luke Belk from Astro Awakening. It has been a hot minute or a few. Actually, it's been quite a while since I've put up some videos on my YouTube channel. So I thank you for your patience, those of you that are still sticking around. This video is one of many videos I'll be putting up in relation to Saturn's ingress into Aries, which is happening later this week. In fact, it's happening this coming Sunday. This is a big shift I'm looking forward to. Saturn moving out of the last sign of the zodiac and into the first sign of the zodiac, where he will meet, not quite, but soon, Neptune, that's in Aries already. So their conjunction doesn't happen until February of 2026. However, they're both co-present in the sign of Aries at the end of this week. And right through until about September, where Saturn will retrograde back into Pisces. And then we'll have Saturn's final transit of Pisces for about 30 years. Thank God for that. He'll be moving right back to the 25th degree and then forward again into Aries next February and meeting Neptune around the 0 degrees of Aries around the 20th of February next year. So there's some big moves on the way, and this video is a short little video as I'm going to cover a couple of things in relation to Saturn and its significations, Aries, and in your birth chart. And then I'm going to go back to 1996 and have a look at some of the key world events that were going on in 1996 in particular, which was when Saturn was last in Aries. Now, Saturn moved into Aries in 1996 around April, then did a retrograde, and then was back in by 1997, where it moved through Aries from 1997 through till 1999. What I did in this for this video is I've just gone back to 1996 from April forward and just looked at some of the key events and in relation to what was going on. And it's interesting for two reasons. One, we can look at certain things in light of a Saturn Aries transit and the symbolism associated to it and see how these sort of correlate to significant events that we have, as well as we're talking about 29 years ago. And it's interesting marker of time, you know, so I can't believe then you go back to 1996 and what was going on and how that shaped our culture and reality and society, and now where we are almost 30 years later. And it's sobering in a way, which is a Saturn signification. The cold, hard reality is, holy fuck, where did that 30 years go? Like, wow, like I don't feel too much different. Although if I go back to that time, I'm like, so much has happened. Funny thing happened to me recently was I was catching up with my family and they were going through a whole lot of old videos and they were able to put them onto a little USB and put them into the TV for the first time. And in 1996, I had left high school that year. And in 1996 through to 1997, I was living at home and helping my family, my father at the time, build one of our houses. He was a builder. My older brother was a chippy, a carpenter, and he was there for a little bit. But for me, pretty much for almost 12 months, I helped my father build a house. Now, can you get any more Saturnian than that? Saturn in Aries. I didn't go on to become a chippy or a carpenter or a builder. I went on to become a pest controller. Long story short, we won't go there. But that was an interesting thing because I looked back and I was like, holy shit, that's me in 1996, 1997. Whoa, man, like I had hair. I didn't have as much, chub on my body either. But it's funny, like, wow, we take things for granted and how quickly life can go. Now, I know that's a long time, 30 years, but it's when you look back, it's like, God, that wasn't that long ago. It didn't feel that long ago. So it's an interesting exercise. I encourage you to go back to 1996 in your life, 1997, 1998, 1999. And just have a think about what was happening in your life at that time, how old you were. For those of you being born then, you're going through your first Saturn return. So you're hitting your 28, 29, 30 years. You're going through your first Saturn return. So congratulations. It's a time of maturing. Briefly, I just wanted to touch base to thank everyone for their comments and questions and messages, wondering where I was and when videos were coming and what's going on. I've been extremely busy professionally, personally. March was a bit of a write-off for me. I got really ill. But I've just finally moved house for the fifth time in 12 months. And now I'm pretty sorted and solid and set with where we are. We've managed to purchase a home and setting up an office so that I can work and get a bit more stable. So hence why in that period of time, a lot of moving and changing, as well as in the back end, I'm building my self-mastery hub, which is a place to learn astrology because of how it's a powerful tool to integrate into your life, whether you want to be more spiritually inclined or use it as a tool for self-development. So that's happening in the background, which is hopefully launching in the short future. So that's been what's happening for me personally. I thank you for your patience and hopefully you can get more videos up here in a timely fashion. We have Saturn in its sign of fall. Now, a planet, when it moves into its sign of fall, its functions tend to struggle a little bit. So Saturn is about structure, discipline, patience. It's about working towards things, being consistent, being moderate, facing reality. Stoicism is a philosophy associated, I think, best to the planet Saturn. It's just like facing your reality, and it's not necessarily what's happening outside of you, it's how you're choosing to respond to what's going on, and really looking at virtue as a pathway, living a virtuous life as a pathway to happiness. So it's an interesting sort of philosophy to best associate to Saturn. And Saturn with Aries significations are about action and speed and impulse and independence. So the sort of slowed down, structured, consistent, disciplined, methodical, pragmatic, practical approach that Saturn sort of represents is said to be not in its best place when it's in the sign of Aries. So there is some silver lining here. There's some sort of alchemy to think about in relation to Saturn in Aries, and we'll get to that. So, what you're going to be doing in your birth chart is you're going to be looking to your Aries house, whether you're using whole sign or whether you're using quadrant side type housings. And you want to look to your Aries house. Now, it's the one after Pisces. So, wherever Saturn has been for the last 2.5 years, kicking your butt in Pisces, is now moving into the next sign. And so now it's usually moving house two. It might not move exactly depending on the cusp of your houses, whether they start at the zero like whole sign do, or quadrant houses start at a divided degree. So that's the area of life where this transit is focusing. Now, there's a tendency with Saturn to avoid that particular area because it's depressive or it's hard or it's a problem or there's a challenge going on there and it's difficult and we'd rather not. Saturn is like, well, you have to do this thing. And it's like, I liken our voice of conscience that lives on our shoulder as this old grandpa or grandmother voice. Oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing this. Why aren't you doing this? You should be doing that, as the voice of Saturn. So that area of your life where it's like, oh God, I got that thing I gotta do. It's like, oh, it's never usually joyful. It's always usually an obligation, a responsibility, a duty of some kind. Now, the goal here is that when you confront that and you have a disciplined approach to that, stoic approach perhaps, you're able to, plant good seeds to reap good deeds. With Saturn, it's what you sow is what you reap. Okay, plant good seeds and do good deeds, and you'll reap the rewards. You may reap the rewards for effort, or you may suffer the consequences for the lack. And Saturn doesn't give a shit whether it's reward or consequence, it's just the concretization of that particular reality. One thing that you can look at with the house where your Saturn is going through is you can look at this idea of karmic retribution. What's been going on in this particular area of life and what effort has been going into that, because Saturn is going to concretize that particular reality for you. So if there's been challenges in this area and you've been avoiding them or you're not been confronting them or you've been sort of thinking, oh, I'll put it off till later, I'll do it some other time, then the kick up the butt Saturn can come in and concretize a reality. It could feel like a lack or a challenge or a blockage or an obstacle or a limitation in some kind as a direct consequences for the lack of that effort. And adversely, it also can bring reward for effort. lasting reward, recognized reward for effort, ambitions reached, goals achieved, that sort of thing. So again, it's not the planets are going to represent good, bad, or indifferent. They're representing particular energies that are coming through. And it's the effort and energy that's going on in time, Saturn being the ruler of time, as in Greek mythology known as Chronos. It's been the effort in time that you receive the reward or consequence, and in direct proportion. And that's the realization or concretization of a reality that Saturn may represent. Saturn asks us to apply discipline to a particular area of our life. And discipline creates a strong willpower. And interestingly, the undiluted expression of innocent impulse, action, initiation, assertiveness, drive, motivation, or action is the will is Aries. So with Saturn in Aries, there is the alchemy of this particular alignment is disciplined will, a will that is really honed and disciplined. The mind is where the discipline needs to be applied for it then to translate through disciplined action. Because if you've made a commitment to something, to do it or to stop doing it, it is going to be your disciplined will that allows you to commit to that agreement or that commitment or uphold that commitment. So when we think about Saturn in Aries, we're making a commitment to be disciplined in our action, what we do and the way in which we do it. And over the next 2.5 years, that's really what we're able to sow now. What is required in order to live authentically, independently, freely, and sovereignly as we move forward, individually and as a collective in community? It's going to be disciplined will, right? It's going to be taking responsibility for your own actions into this particular world and doing things, exercising that authority that you have over your life. So therefore, it's becoming less dependent on any organized system, becoming more independent, more Aries. What is the pathway to become more Aries? The warrior, the initiator, the pioneer, the instigator, the independent, the I am principle? Saturn. Discipline, consistency, commitment. All right. It's stepping onto the Jedi path of the apprentice. You are now entering your apprentice years as the Jedi, and there will be some harsh conditions and training, and it's going to require an exercised, disciplined will. As a big picture, when we think about Saturn and Aries, it allows us the opportunity to understand this so that we can actually individually apply it. And we can then exercise the power of astrology in our own individual way. Now, for everyone, disciplined will is going to look different, and it's going to be in relation to a different aspect of your particular life. But first and foremost, it's over the self. It's discipline over the self. Okay. You have to have discipline over the self with your choices, your actions on those choices. There needs to be an exercising of discipline. What I'm going to do for the second half of this video is I'm just going to go through with some commentary over some of the significant world events that were occurring through 1996 as Saturn first moved into Aries, and that was this last transit. Now, Saturn will meet Neptune, but not until 2026 in February, and their last meeting in Aries was in 1380. Okay, so the year 1380 was the last time that Saturn and Neptune had a conjunction in Aries. So their conjunction, even though it operates around a 40-year cycle, the last one was in Capricorn in 1989, 1990, and we are yet to see the significations or the symbolism of this. But we might get a little window in 2025 of 2026. In fact, June through till September of 2025 is like you're sitting at the movies watching a preview of 2026. because what's happening this year astrologically is going to repeat early next year and through the middle of next year. So, get your popcorn ready, but also remain the observer for the outer world. In April of 1996 is when Saturn moved into Aries. Aries ruled by Mars. Mars is about violence, guns, war, attacks, those types of things. In Australia in 1996, in April, not long after Saturn made its ingress into Aries, and Australia's birth chart has Aries ascendant. So this moved into the first not the first house by our sign, but moved into energy of the people of Australia. And we had the Port Arthur massacre that was pinned on Martin Bryant. Now, there is a lot, just like there is with September 11 and the moon landing and the JFK and COVID and all those types of events that have occurred with regards to the Port Arthur massacre. If you haven't looked into this, there is a lot of resounding sort of evidence to suggest that Martin Bryant was a fall guy for perhaps CIA operatives operating in Australia under some sort of secret military exercise that was going on. With the intention for what? Which happened later in 1996. In October of 1996, we had the gun buyback laws in Australia enforced, and there was like 680,000 guns confiscated. So, a population that's not armed is a population easy to control. The movie Independence Day came out, which I thought was pretty interesting. Jay-Z released a record called Beyond Reasonable Doubt. And the reason I highlighted that was because Beyond Reasonable Doubt, there's a lot of stuff that's coming out now with the Diddy and all of that sort of shit that could actually move over to the Jay-Z aspect of this. And I was like, oh, is this sort of like a prophecy back then in 1996, Beyond Reasonable Doubt? I just thought that was pretty interesting. In July of 1996, Veronica Guerin, who was a journalist in Ireland, was shot dead in her car. Now, there's a movie, I can't remember the title, but it's a fucking great movie. I think Kate Blanchett plays Veronica Guerin. And that's a fantastic story. If you haven't watched that, go and watch that. The Constitution of Ukraine was signed into law. I thought that was really interesting. So we're going through with these types of events, in particular, Constitution of Ukraine. Okay, that therefore the Constitution of Ukraine's birth chart has Saturn in Aries. Okay, it's 0 degrees Aries. So we're going to have Saturn moving back into 0 degrees Aries. What is that going to mean for the Constitution of Ukraine? Well, there's interesting things to unfold over the next 2.5 years as Saturn goes back through Aries, marking the first Saturn return for the Constitution of Ukraine. Hotmail, the email provider, Hotmail began in July of 1996. Well, isn't that the most shittest email fucking thing? I'll tell you what, I have the most problems emailing information, links, and stuff to people with Hotmail accounts. But I had a Hotmail account in 1996. So in the year 2000, only 4 years later, I moved to the UK and I was at 22 and I opened up a Hotmail account. I probably still got it somewhere, but I don't know how to access it. The Spice Girls debuted with "Wannabe." If you wanna be my lover, so that was interesting. Saturn and Aries energy. The George R. R. Martin, who wrote A Song of Fire and Ice, which later on became the Game of Thrones, that was published in 1996. I thought that was interesting because the Game of Thrones really is about humanity's transition from the age of Aries and into the age of Pisces. So it came out with a Saturn in Aries. I thought that was really interesting because really, it's if you watch that movie, you're watching a depiction of the transition of the ages from the age of Aries to the age of Pisces. They sit on the Iron Throne made of swords. They rule the seven kingdoms. This is the Game of Thrones, which is what is happening in the sky. So played out here on the Earth, and depicted by George R. R. Martin. What a fantastic fucking series. Never read the books, but fantastic series. All the best. All the same. Tupac Shakur was shot in September in Virgo season. He was a Gemini. He was shot dead. And then also we had Martin Lawrence, the comedian, the black comedian from the US. He went through a mental breakdown in 1996, and he is an Aries. Tupac has a Aries moon. So Tupac shot dead with Aries moon, Saturn in Aries. And his Aries moon's in question because it could be Pisces or it could be Aries because we don't know his birth time. But on his birthday, he could have been Pisces or Aries moon. So the fact that he was shot dead on September the 7th tells me that he has an Aries moon because Saturn would have conjunct his moon, which is a significator of death. But that doesn't mean that if Saturn's transiting your chart that you're going to die. So there's a lot of other factors, but definitely I'm thinking that he must have had an Aries moon. The show Judge Judy aired in the with the Saturn in Aries, and I thought that was really interesting because you've got Saturn, which is like when you look at the legal system and the judges wear black, they're wearing the color of Saturn because they are the authority, they're the law, they're the boss, they're the ones that are going to hand down the punishment. That's all the Saturn theme. So, airing this Judge Judy, that show that we all know, sitting up in the last time Saturn was in Aries, which is quite interesting. And in November, actually, no, December, excuse me, of 1996, NASA launched its first Mars rover. And I thought that was really interesting because Mars is the planet that rules Aries. Now, what I witnessed when I was going through 1996 and a lot of the historical events was that there was a lot of fucking rockets and shit that NASA sent up, and there was this shuttle this and shuttle that and Mars rover this. In 20 fucking 9 years, they're spending but how advanced is phone technology gone in 25? The other thing was it Motorola? I think it was Motorola, or it could have been Nokia released the first flip phone. It was called an Oyster flip phone, right? In 1996. Remember those old phones? And you like that? So in 1996, the phone that was a flip phone is now, look at it now. We've pretty much got the most sophisticated fucking computer and camera and every fucking thing you can imagine on the phone. Like the technology from 1996 to now in phone technology is so advanced. Yet NASA has been sending rockets for that whole time, 29 years into space. And what are they doing? Where are they going? They haven't gone to the moon. They haven't gone to any other planet. They got nothing. They got fucking nothing. You know why? Because NASA's the biggest scam ever. And on that note, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you like this video, hit that one, share it around. There's more coming. Thanks for your patience, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.